Click. Click.
Especially for my people, for 400 plus years, we've been discriminated against and not given opportunities.
I think that there's a bit of a slippery slope that happens when we bring people into certain opportunities or certain institutions simply because of their skin color. And you could even argue that itself inherently could be a bit racist.
It's reasonable to have equal amount of different races involved in the workplace. But is it achievable the way we're doing it right now? No, I don't think it is.
So if achieving both is impossible, is the pursuit of inclusion actually creating more division?
Wow. So the real question is, if we're all arguing amongst ourselves and fighting amongst ourselves, who is it that we're not looking at to fight with? Hey, everybody, come with me. Look up. Hello, everybody. I'm aronmsound. Welcome back to the show. Which is Look Up, the conversation that I interject myself into to stretch it out and to get us to go somewhere else that we're most likely not looking, which is generally above our heads. Yes, indeed. So welcome back. Don't forget to like and subscribe before we move on, because I might gibber and jabber and forget to even tell you. So today I have found a wonderful channel, and it is really informative as well as smart. So if you're into that kind of thing and you want to see a different side and want to see somebody battling against the status quo mentality of prison poopy flinging thoughts, then come along with me to check out the Gen channel, Gen, all capitals, and make sure to like and subscribe on the Gen channel as well as here. Let's get at it. Let's talk about the BS and the wildness that is nothing less than bigotry, racism being used as a manipulation tool. And I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. It absolutely exists. It exists in all fashions, in all ways, against almost everybody. But if we're all arguing amongst ourselves, who are we looking at? And is this being propagated against us? Is this something that we're doing to ourselves? Is it time that we move out of this? Let's look at the conversation and have some thoughts, shall we? All right, let's flip it on over. Engineer, it's not there. You ready? Oh, he's not there. All right, here we go. Oh, run it back. All the way. Here we go. Oh, hold on. I got one for you. I've been practicing this face all day. It's very popular, apparently. Am I getting that wrong? Yeah, okay. Here we go. And now, from the Gen channel.
Do you make white jokes?
I mean, I'm not going to lie, I've been guilty of it.
I don't think it's possible to be racist towards white people.
Racism was invented by white people.
Why do you think it's more accepted in society to make jokes about white people?
Because they make jokes about the rest of us.
White people have never gone through any oppression.
So the question I want to ask.
Okay. I've heard this time and time again. And I'm not going to stand up for anybody who's creating racism. I'm not going to stand up for anybody who's creating bigotry. I'm not going to stand up for anybody who hates their neighbor just because they can't stand what they look like. That whole thing of like, I don't like what your face looks like, makes me want to fight you. Sounds to me like you're in 4th grade and you didn't learn the lessons out of kindergarten, and somebody needs to come over and be like, hey, get back in the poopy sandpit and throw some poop with the kitty poopy pile. Okay? Thank you very much.
Is it okay to be racist towards white people?
I still struggle with this myself. Despite their ancestral impact on America, it's not right to put all of them in that box.
I don't think.
And that's something to remember. Individuals, and I'm not just talking about white people, anybody, because racism, bigotry, prejudices, all of these effects, and racism is a system, by the way, so it can be argued, and it will come up that white people can't be held back with racism. And I would have to say, actually, what you're not maybe aware of is the background surrounding the term black, which is originally a financial term, which brings me to my actual point, which is that most of these arguments are about financial injustices. When you bring it down to the root, the reason somebody would enslave somebody else is because they want to make money off you. And now we capitulate to all of this to retain a level of comfort, because it's cheaper to give us comfort than it is to give us freedom in its truest form. And why? Because it's so much easier to keep us running around in a circle propagating a wealth system that keeps a couple a very tiny percentage of people on planet Earth happy and fulfilled. And it takes away from the rest of us. And I'm sorry, I jumped to my point very quickly because it's so important that we talk about this. That the argument is such a runaround. Not excluding the fact that it does exist. Racism is a big thing, huge thing in everyday life. Bigotry towards one another. The arguments over every little petty detail of what you look like, what you act like, where your belief is, what your background is. When the truth is, if you didn't realize it, there's 8 billion of us. And who is it for any one of us to say that the rest of them aren't correct?
It's okay to be racist towards anyone. White people are still people.
It is possible to be racist towards white people as well, yes.
I don't think you can be racist towards white people.
What do you mean by that?
Racism was invented by white people. You can't take it out of historical context.
Well, I disagree with that because once again, the term black was a financial term, and Irish people who are visibly white were called black, which is why at one point in time, there was this kind of stereotypical statement that, Irish people claim to be black. And that is only a terminology. Your skin color is not that. And honestly, I would argue that most of my African-American friends are brown, or people of different variants of colors that go across the shade depending upon whether you came from Benin or the Congo or Egypt or South Africa or Zimbabwe or Nigeria or And we're all from different places, and based on where we are and how the sun hit us and how our ancestors, how much time they spent in the sun, and how much water was around us, that's why we look the way we do. So, to me, growing up in a diverse environment, I've always wondered, what's going on? Why would somebody hate somebody because of some other background or experience? Oh, because it's so much easier than looking at where the issues come from. It's the fact that you and I are fighting for the same piece of bread. Okay.
So historically, there's been one race that has more power in the system. Racism was invented by white people to protect white power primarily.
And I think there's a mistake between seeing a specific group of governing forces, meaning the kings of Western Europe, who, yes, they were white. And they propagated a system that allowed for people that looked like them and who were from their background and religious beliefs to retain wealth across history. And it undermined 20+ thousand years of history in Africa. So we can't ignore this system. But the system has changed to include the whole of the planet. And anybody in any fashion of background, if you're not part of the tiny, elite, exceptionalist few. So I would argue that the argument itself is now a fallacy, only based off the fact that we are, in fact, now in the same boat. And it is easily used against all and every single one of us who is not part of the exceptionalism to argue amongst ourselves and distrust our neighbor instead of joining together and looking in the right direction, which is most of the cases looking upward. Because something's fallen on us.
I don't think it's possible to be racist towards white people. There needs to be a system of oppression. Generally, white people are the ones controlling that system of oppression.
Okay, so something I got to talk about as well with this is that white people can be racist towards white people. Bigotry is bigotry. Hating is hating. There is no rationale for being cruel or mistreating anybody else in dating, in neighboring, in humaning, in your job place. Bigotry is bigotry. And if you, by the way, if you're out there spreading the word of love and you still think that some imaginary force is telling you to hate somebody else, that's your own mind. And you maybe part of the problem. Most likely are, and I'm telling you right now, you're the problem. You're the problem. You hear me? You hear me? I don't think you hear me. Let me, yeah? Oh, you hear that? Emergency alarm. You're heading towards your shelter. You're the problem. You are the problem. Don't be bigoted, ass. Don't be an asshole. That needed a triple blast, right? What are they for? No, that was a quintuple blast. Quintuple blast! Sorry.
Why do you think it's more accepted in society to make jokes about white people?
Because they make jokes about the rest of us.
Because we're idiots. Just on a whole. If I'm going to generalize, the greatest stupid videos of mankind have come from those of us who rush in where angels fear to tread. I give you the jackasseries. I give you the Darwin Awards. I don't know of a single winner of the Darwin Award that doesn't fit a certain complexion.
Constantly. So do you feel like you have your guard up against white people?
Sometimes I do.
When white people are going through hardship, they're not.
Yeah, I do too, actually. Can I tell you something? I do too. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that people look at my face and just assume I'm something they want me to be. I'm a litmus of what people think humans are. And I love dressing when I've traveled around the world. I love dressing in as close to the local dress as possible. Because I tend to look like whomever I'm around, unless I'm, even in some African countries, believe it or not. Why? Because humans are more alike than they are different. Can I clap again for you? Humans are more alike than they are different. Okay, Karen? Okay, Tommy? Okay, Kevin? Okay, you got it. You got it. Okay, I think you got it. No, seriously, let me be patronizing to you further. Did you guys not learn the lessons? I hope you did. And if you're sitting there going, no, Aaron, I learned the lessons, then tell your neighbor and don't be afraid of it. Don't be passive aggressive and let these fools be mean anymore. Be cruel to their neighbor and keep messing it up for the rest of us who don't like the exceptionalism, because that's where the battle lays, in that we stay silent and we capitulate and allow for it to happen. Because if you don't turn and be like, yo, shush. Yo, what is? No. Do the little Honda. No. If you don't just no. They're gonna keep on talking, and they will never self-reflect. Oh, yeah. This guy's great. You probably haven't heard a word that's being said, but that's okay. He's great. Take my word for it, okay? Okay?
To a black community in general, like white people, the privilege behind that.
You make white jokes?
I do sometimes, a little bit, but I'm trying to do better.
By the way, white privilege is strictly a very white thing. That means white and Christian. And I say that because, as somebody who appears melanin lacking, I do not get the benefit because I have certain appendages that people immediately decide are something else, not knowing that I am, enough native to live on a reservation. And this nose comes from my grandfather on that side. Then my grandfather, who has the, this would be associated bigotry-wise with this background, is actually got a little pig nose and had blonde hair and blue eyes. And my dad has blonde hair and blue eyes, and so does my uncle, and so do my nieces. But you wouldn't know that. One of them lives in Liechtenstein, speaks German. But you wouldn't know that. Because you might assume that I'm over here like Pesach boy. I'm not going to say I didn't have a bar mitzvah because, I was told, go have a bar mitzvah and then figure it out for yourself. So, by the way, that's one of the reasons why I have the views I do. I was told by my blonde-haired, blue-eyed, actually bald at the time, grandpa, very religious man, actually, but a theologian and a philosopher and a teacher And he said, do this one thing. Do this one thing for me, and you can do whatever it is that you want. That's as best as I can do. I was a young man. He's been gone since I was 16. So. But he had this cute little accent. He was a little tiny man. Anyways, wonderful. Grandpa Louis. What an amazing character. So I was told at a young age to not see differences and to learn as much as you could about the differences and see each other as human. Which is why I come at it this way. Why I would mock anybody who'd not see us as who we are, for who we are. Because it's not about what you look like, it's about what you are behaving like amongst other humans. Are you a kind person? Are you a good person? Do you do well by others? Do you treat others with respect? Or are you just combative for the sake of combative? Do you not ask people about themselves? Do you not care about others? Will you step over somebody who's suffering just because you're too scared to help? Which is different from you are incapable to help. Because that might be a good idea for you not to help if you're incapable of doing so. Now, the other portion of all this is the exclusion of multiple ideas being right simultaneously. Multiple things can be correct at the same time. Especially because colloquial reality is important to comprehend. Knowing that your local reality is where the common sense is for you. If you grew up in an area, common sense is different than it is elsewhere. So we're not all going to look at life the same way. I'm sorry. Let's keep going, shall we? Yeah, okay. Let's get going.
Few years, there's a growing movement where we're telling white people not only to ignore, but to accept things that we would never say to another race.
This is
too many white people in here, and this is a space for people of color.
I mean, I don't even know what to say about that. That's just straight bigotry and like, are you just angry and mean and stupid? By the way, this is all college. Like, this is not even a decade ago. It was all about safe spaces and don't say anything that I don't like. And no, mind you, I'm by no means, I don't take part in the spectrum of politics like the way normal people do. I don't see things quite the way same way people do. But when I see people lashing out, hurt people. That's what I've come to. Hurt people. And there's some kind of weird justification for eye for an eye. But what does that make us? Yeah, everybody's missing a freaking eye at the end. So it just makes us stupid. Because we're buying into somebody else's little game. And it turns out, when we buy into that game, we're also buying the products that go along with that game. And I bet she doesn't realize that makeup is part of it. And the hair, and the cars, and the bags, and the whole lifestyle idea that goes with each of our segmented little prisons so we can throw poop at each other.
If progress is the goal, then we must acknowledge inconsistencies and call out the double standards.
Hell yeah! Come on, bro!
All the time. Shut up, Whitey. I mean...
Huh? Let me run that back. Hold on a second. What did he say? He said...
For people of color.
If progress is the goal, then we must acknowledge inconsistencies and call out the double standards.
Bro, you make fun of white people all the time.
Shut up, Whitey. I mean...
That's funny.
Bro, dude, I'm just trying to make a video right now. But what...
It's true. I use the K word. I'm not going to use it here. Because it's funny when you use it for your own people. Now, owning humor. Owning humility. Because humor is humility. The ability to laugh at oneself. And we've kind of lost that. We've taken ourselves so seriously because of the way that we've all been treated. And the way that we feel we're all being treated. And because, essentially, we know we're all being robbed from. Who's robbing us? Well, a very few. And that thievery is of our happiness. Why would someone steal joy? Well, because it makes us ignore the real problems. And we have to grovel around on the ground and look around to the closest person to us and steal from each other. Because, once again, when we're all fighting for the same slice of bread like Jean Valjean, we'll put ourselves into a revolutionary mode and not look at the power structure until we've burned our entire world down. And then by the time the world is burned down around us, it's too late. I call this Jean Valjean syndrome. We've got to break free of wanting to steal the bread for petty purpose and petty need, which is immediate need, for removing the blockade to having bread for everybody, which is a consistent role, and then not become the proletariat afterwards so that we just become the same oppressor. And what oppressor is that? The caste system that has never ended for any of us. It's ruled by finance. It's ruled by money. It's ruled by the need to get over on one another at any cost, or else we don't eat, have shelter, clean water, and live any kind of comfort. Meanwhile, that is manufactured scarcity so that we fight about who's right.
Questioning this issue make me a white apologist or an Uncle Tom. But more importantly, am I making the problem worse by even talking about it? Guess we gon' see. How would you define racism?
Racism is judging or seeing yourself differently from somebody else because of the color of your skin.
I would just say just preconceived notions about someone based on their skin color. It's
okay, so some of this is this strange thing that's been happening to words, where people put their perception of what a word is into the meaning of a word. And I don't think that's very safe for us to do. It's very Orwellian. If you're not familiar with that is, look up 1984, read the book where the thought police change the meaning of words over time. Then there's also Brave New World, where we create a comfort environment that laxes us out from the meaning of life, so that we forget what those meanings are, and we replace them with the comfort meanings instead of what they really are, and by end result, shifting the purpose of reality. Another easier one that I think everybody's familiar with is Animal Farm, where the rules change over and over for the purpose of the pigs at the top to sit at a table with the humans inside the house. So meaning and words are important, and I think the confusion is that racism is a system whereby bigotry is used to control others. Once again, racism is a system by which bigotry is used to control others, or prejudice. Bigotry is the dislike of others for differences and the action thereof. Prejudice is the belief that people who are different than you are not the same and or not as good. It can be also interpreted as that. So there are three different words that mean three different things and are oftentimes mistaken for one another and used interchangeably. And that's a troubling thing because they don't mean different things. They don't mean something, they don't mean the same thing. Not going to edit that out. You know how it is on this show. These things, prejudice, bigotry, and racism. They're in the same world, but they don't mean the same thing. So if you dislike somebody else for what they look like or what they act like or their background, that's bigotry. If you actively hold it against them in life and you do things to undermine them, that's prejudice. And if you're racist, then you actively work against those people. Does that make sense? So you understand that? Is that that's how it works? So bigotry is the system that you're basically believing. Prejudice is the system that you're enacting, and racism is the overriding system of control by using bigotry. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, just like misogyny. We'll talk about that at a different time because misogyny, misandry, the meanings of those words, apparently people don't know misandry. Everybody knows misogyny, but they don't know what it means. And then blah, 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 as well as feminism. Look up!
Like a systemic system where basically people are starting off at a way different point because of the color of their skin.
Racism is a made-up social structure, exploits people based on their race. Globally, it seems.
Hey, somebody knows the actual meaning. How nice of him. Thank you. But then he misinterprets it right away.
Like there's a lot of whiteness controlling racism.
Is it okay to be prejudiced towards white people then?
Sure.
Is it okay to have...
Is it okay to be prejudiced towards white people? Look, you do you. Okay, you do you, boo. But seriously, having any righteousness in being ruthless, rude, mean, cruel, unkind, or otherwise a freaking idiot towards other humans is called being an ass. So if you like being an ass and that's how you are, okay. But I don't really know what you're trying to get out of life other than being a jerk. And we don't live in caves anymore. You don't have to carry a club around, a metaphor club, so that you can be something more important. No, oh, you got the bag. Oh, you got the bag. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Kyle. I didn't realize you got the bag. Oh, the F-150. Oh, the Charger. Okay. Listen closely. Hating one another is nothing but buying into the con. So when I say this to you, I want you to remember this, that believing in bigotry and racism as a form of self-empowerment is a con. Bigotry is buying into a con that a power structure is keeping you believing like a prison. It's a con. And now back to our regular scheduled program.
Prejudice towards black people?
I mean, it's not okay, but I think racism describes a system of power.
So for some, it seems like racism is about...
He got that right. And then he turned it around. He was like, hey, racism is a system of power. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So if you're afraid of others and you want to just interject yourself in their life and just have an overriding structure power... Get up, man. It's just sorry. Bad green screening. It kind of looks like I got like dandruff when I shake my head. Oh gosh, I don't. I use the fancy stuff. And yeah, that's real. That's all real. And that's not a comb over. It's not a comb over. Somebody. So I'm not gonna go into the buffooneries. But that's not a comb over, folks. That's just glorious hair. And I'm doing this because all three of my brothers are basically bald and my dad is bald. So, anyhow, speaking of prejudice, hair matters, okay, people? There's a lot of guys out there who are like...
punching down, not punching up. But does that
mean
that minorities
who cares?
Don't have the power to discriminate? Let's see what the other side would say. A lot of people these days say that reverse racism doesn't exist. What do you think about that?
There's this belief that racism against the person who is most likely to conduct the racism doesn't make it racist, which is untrue.
If you're definitely...
Hey! Hate plus hate equals hate! Like that math? Yeah, hate plus hate equals hate. Hate plus hate. All right.
Of racism is purely systematic. No, I don't believe reverse racism can exist. If it's just a matter of discrimination, then yeah, absolutely.
I had a racist brother, and he was indigenous. Just because you're a minority doesn't mean...
Oh, yeah, let's talk about that. I vividly remember my native grandfather being incredibly bigoted about his own mother, telling me stories about how ashamed he was of her wearing basically a burlap sack that she had made for herself as a dress and peeing on the side of the road. That she's born and raised in the forest, in a log cabin. This is turn of the century. I know, Homer. Yes, incredible stories. If you're not familiar, Homer's my cat, the co-producer of the show, and occasionally he'll just chime in. And yeah, exactly. I know, I'm telling them. So, yes. So it runs in the self-hatred of shame that we then want to project onto others because we feel shame for it. And he tried to teach me to dislike others for their differences, and I didn't buy into it because he was also, unfortunately, quite the drunk. But that's a whole other story. We could talk about the history of why some of my ancestors ended up that way, and that has a lot to do with a whole portion of why I believe the things I believe, because I see the systems that they were sold into, and it's just a simplified version of what we're all buying into now because of the comfort levels and because of the little areas that conveniently echo our own thoughts right back at us, like, oh yeah, no, you hate people and that's just fine. No, you're okay. No, just go to sleep. Go to sleep. Okay, there's your boom boom. Okay, go to sleep now. Meanwhile, what they're doing is fool's gold. All right, you get it? You understand here? All right, let's keep watching.
Hate. A lot of cases of racism, you find that people that are racist are the victim of something.
Do you think, though, at times people use that excuse of like, you can't be racist towards white people, and they mask hate with good intention?
I listen to my friends who are like people of color, and they tell me their experiences and how they feel, and I just try to understand the best.
Yeah, I don't tend to agree with him on that because I've experienced so much just seething hatred for people around me that I'm traveling with, working for. Got nothing. We just walk into the room and then suddenly, for some reason, the person next to me starts behaving badly, or the clerk behind the counter moves away from us and has the person who is the person of color behind the counter come over and help us. Or, I've experienced all kinds of things, including back in the day working for a certain very famous rap group in the late 90s, where in Utah we pulled into a Nowheresville pizza spot with our two buses, and I walked in looking as I did. I was bald with lots of earrings and big chains on and a big chain, and I think I was wearing like a tufty, a big old fluffy jacket, and I was the first one in. And I mostly because I knew what was coming, and this little shop didn't know what was about to hit it, and so I said, hey man, you're gonna want to just start making pizza. Everybody's gonna want something different. They're gonna want a bunch of this and this and that. We have some Muslims and when I said Muslims, he was like, oh hell no, we don't serve your kind. Might as well tell them stay on the bus. What? Really? Yeah, I don't think you want to do, and right about as I'm saying, I don't think you want to do that, is when the entire, for the term of what we used for ourselves, the posse came in at that time. So you probably, I'm guessing, I hope you know who that is at this time, because I totally different feed of storylines. Someday I'll tell those other stories from those point of views of, share the names and stuff, but, not now. We're talking about something different. We're talking about racism and bigotry and prejudice. In this case, it's talking about, can you be prejudiced towards white people? And I think you can be prejudiced towards anybody. I think that people hate to hate to hate to hate because it's empowering and it's easier than giving somebody your hand and trusting that they're like you and that you're not actually fighting over resources. Because that's what's important about this, is we're all actually fighting over a systemic manufactured limitation of resources, not whether or not the person next to us is a kind person or not. Because most of us don't even know. It's a matter of ignorance in most cases. Which is a red flag, I would think, for most people. But not when you're doped up on that anger biz, because that'll make you turn around and spend 12 hours bedazzling your own poopy poop poop and throwing it out of your own unlocked cells saying, I can't get out of here. Don't pull the wool right over your own eyes, folks. Don't do that. Come on with Uncle Aaron. Let's talk about it then.
Today is a lot of the racism that we see in the West in your face or behind closed doors.
Oh, both.
So in order to address such issues, policies like affirmative action and racial quotas were introduced in the 60s to increase representations for historically disadvantaged groups.
And if you don't think the same group that was fighting about that then is trying to roll back the same issues, you need to look into Ruby Bridges. If you don't know who that is, I'm just going to say you do. You just probably don't realize that you know who that is. All right? All right.
In our time, change has come to this nation too.
As we see today, controversy remains.
Affirmative action harms everybody, though in different ways.
As Thomas Sowell put it, it was a break from the traditional justice of equal opportunity.
If you're not familiar with Thomas Sowell, I highly advise you to look him up and check out his writing and his ethics and his philosophy. It really is a break from the norm. And from the norm, meaning the capitulation to limitation in thought, or boxing, or binary thought, as in, like, either you're one side or the other, and not seeing the width and nuance of life and an inclusion in thought. This man is one of the modern day geniuses for the entirety of the philosophy of open-mindedness.
The same rules for all, to a shift towards cosmic justice with a focus on equalizing prospects and creating equality of outcome.
The requirement for treating everyone the same.
Which, by the way, the equality of outcome is equity. That means that the playing field is made for all people. Now, there is a polar opposite thought, which comes for the individualist and exceptionalism, which is built out of the Ayn Rand school of theory in the 20th century. And many people will point to these Ayn Rand books that suggest exceptionalism. But if you look, even she didn't actually believe in those things towards the end of her life.
It's very simple. It's mass-produced. The requirements for cosmic justice must be handmade and tailored to each individual case.
So it raises the question, can both equality and equity even coexist?
And this is the point that I like to make, is that there's no such thing as mass-produced happiness. Individuality is as it is described. Individual. It is not something that can be made on a production scale. It must be tailored by the individual, for the individual, in the local environment. And to convince ourselves otherwise is nothing less than a part of the con, which is short for construct.
What are your thoughts on, let's say, racial quotas or diversity hiring in the context of jobs or university?
Programs like affirmative action, I think, are necessary, and I think they've shown to be effective.
They have, and I'm not going to argue that at all. Because although this is a balance, it is not a balance of hatred. It puts in a quota so that there's, some representation. And the people who would hate that representation tend to be the ones who are not getting what they wish out of it, which is part of the class warfare system. It is the idea that if somebody else gets something, that you lose out. Now, in the case of opportunity, that's not as much the case as financial opportunity is the case. You understand? So there's a truth in that when you don't make a quota for financial opportunity, but not a truth in that when general life and education opportunities are handed out more equally. So it should be allowed that if you don't have a kind of a forced inclusion, you never will, because a small group of people will always hoard because it's in their interest to do so. And we're seeing the effects of the tiny group, which is not exclusive to one racial group, although it might seem so. It is rather an exclusive group of wealthy individuals who don't want the rest of us to share in the well-being that can be had by all, because if we can all have it, they can't have the majority of it. Which, once again, is manufactured limitation in commodity.
balancing income inequality between races.
Job or opportunity should be given to the person who's got the best skill.
I think a lot of the time the perception of diversity hire is that these people are unqualified, where in a lot of the times you're giving somebody the shot to show that they are qualified.
If they didn't have those quotas, then less black people would be in certain programs. If they were to get assessed, they say, okay, no, I have 5 Asians, I have 10 black people.
Isn't that discrimination though?
Of course it's discrimination, but it has to be this way because that's the world we have created.
And there's a difference between discrimination for purpose so you can balance, as opposed to discrimination for purpose so you can imbalance. And it's easy to blur that line just to use the term discrimination, but there's nuance to that discussion. Just like the difference between racism being a system and bigotry being a belief and prejudice being the action of that belief, there's differences. And people would have you believe that there is none just to suit you joining them in their poopy-flinging prison. Okay? Let's not do that. Let's not do it in the prison. We won't stay in our window, and we step outside, and I will grab this sledgehammer over here and hand it to you, and you will be like, yes! Yes, let's break it down! Because it's called an obelisk, folks. It's one of the oldest structures. It's one of the oldest constructs of all humankind. And it's in every major power center right in front of us. It's the emblem of the system that we should be taking down. And once we step out from the obelisk prison that we build up in the Tower of Babel, the Ben that is separate up at the top comes crashing to the ground, and we can see what it is, and we can kick it to the corner, and we can equalize what is our birthright on Earth. To be humans and to enjoy the prosperity and the gifts of this garden.
I would point to things like the Harvard scandal, where really, really qualified Asian kids, so they're getting left out. You can have a shitty doctor because somebody got into med school, but their scores weren't that great. But I believe in quality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. I think that's Marxist.
Yeah, see, one of the things I think that's interesting is that there is some kind of like attempt to bias against the rebalancing in when I read the article to see what he was talking about. It looks like at some point Harvard started cutting off those who were qualified because they had already fulfilled the quotas. Now, using that as quota filling as an excuse is active racism. And it's different than inclusive quotas because you had before been enacting an exclusion to a group of people who is a minority and can't get equal representation because they are a minority. And that's one of the wonderful things about our government, is that we do include even, let's put it in the point of say, the KKK. Yes, you can say that all you want. You can march all you want. The neo-Nazis can march all you want. You got freedom of speech, and we'll stand there and watch your hatred and go, yep, that exists. If anything at all, to recognize that stupidity is out there, and we can look at you and be like, whoop, y'all won the Darwin Awards. Thank goodness we know who you are. You're lucky we don't make it so that you have to be licensed, and then we'd all have to put some clown wigs on you so we can see you. But we don't have to, because we can see you clearly. And that's part of this. There's a more insidious trait to try to lambast the things that we can't see, when really truly the cruel people, they tell you who they are. The unkind people, they tell you who they are. But preconceived notions get in the way of being a good person now, don't they?
Only enforce that with a gun.
I've also heard instances that it actually hurts Asian people the most, who is definitely a minority with only 6% in America. In that sense, do you think that's creating more division?
I only know what I've read, and that's that they have been effective for helping historically underprivileged races.
Especially for my people, for 400 plus years, we've been discriminated against and not given opportunities.
I think that there's a bit of a slippery slope that happens when we bring people into certain opportunities or certain institutions simply because of their skin color, and you could even argue that itself inherently could be a bit racist.
Okay, so prejudicial is sometimes necessary in order to rebalance scales of inequity. Let me say this again. Prejudicial is necessary, in most cases actually, to rebalance scales of inequity. And those aren't just pretty words. That means you have to make decisions that benefit more people than just a few in order to rebalance bullshit scenarios. Is that clear enough? All right, good. I'm glad you got that because I had to describe extensive language in simpler ways because people will be like, excuse me, Aaron, I didn't understand. I didn't understand what you were saying there, so I'm just going to take that as, oh no, as an insult. Is what I'm saying to that kind of thinking.
It's reasonable to have equal amount of different races involved in the workplace. But is it achievable the way we're doing it right now? No, I don't think
not
it is.
really.
So if achieving both is impossible, is the pursuit of inclusion actually...
Because you have too many people that are set against one side of the battle or the other. So when we really need a re-education of ourselves in the community, in the conversation between ourselves to say, hey man, you know that behavior that you think you're getting away with? Yo, that's not okay. Hey, Kevin, Keith, come over here. Yeah, whatever podcast. I know what you're doing. And only just recently, by the way, has whatever podcast gotten away from its alt-right kind of leaning that was happening. I think because they started getting really noticed for it, and dude was wearing a 7%er pin. You know. So let's call it out. Let's call it out. Let's make sure that we send up a warning. You know what I'm saying? That we know what you're saying. We know what you're trying to do. And you're looking like a clown. Because you're standing in an open cage with a handful of your own bedazzled poopy. And you're throwing it all. Hey, oh God, God. Yeah, that's what you're doing. You're acting out of fear, and we aren't Dionysians. We aren't Homo erectus. We aren't cavemen hiding from the darkness because we don't know what's out there. As a matter of fact, we know pretty much what's out everywhere except for the depths of the ocean. That's some scary shit. Sad face.
Creating more division. Because if measures are becoming more extreme and opportunities are given solely based on race, isn't it just gonna go back to the same equality we sought to address?
Diversity matters.
Yes.
And does that include?
We're heading back
Asian
towards
Americans?
that, and it's. If you think that this is an accident, you haven't been paying attention to history very much. The playbook is very clear. There is a group of people in this country, and specifically the West, who would have all of the resources just funneled up to them while the rest of us fight. And I will remind you that when there's blood in the streets, the real estate is cheap.
Not putting my personal opinion.
As he was fired for being a white male to diversify leadership.
It had nothing to do with the fact that he was a jerk, or that people hated his personality, or that he was piss poor at his job performance. No, he was fired for being a white guy. No, none of that's true, but I thought it was pretty funny, because look at me. Look at me. No, look at me. All right, go.
Position.
So besides our obvious history with race, it made me think, why is America so obsessed with race and racism? Do you think talking about...
Let me think. Why is America so... white people!
Racism helps the problem or makes the problem worse?
I think talking about it with different sets of ideals hopefully pushes the conversation forward a little bit.
Well, that's the whole thing. And that is the whole... That is the whole damn thing. You can't have a forward movement without a conversation. And if you start sitting in your corner talking to just the people that agree with you, you're not having a conversation. You're just looking in the mirror going like... excuse me a second. You're munching yourself. You're boxing yourself. You are trying to suck the lily pad from your top half. That's all you're doing. More power to you if you can achieve that. That is a power move. That is a flex. I'm going to point that out. Because you got to be like double jointed in weird places, men and women. Jeez. All the gender. So if you know how to do that and you got a trick for it, comment, like, and subscribe. Please. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm sorry, we got way off the...
And smashed to shit is sometimes good.
White people should be talking more about race. In my social settings with white friends, it isn't brought up enough.
I think there's a certain level of awareness that needs
Oh,
to
that's
be raised.
because,
However,
gosh, I don't think people realize how uncomfortable white quiet people are with having that discussion amongst themselves, because they're afraid that if somebody hears them having that discussion, it might be misconstrued in another direction, and it's hard to even have the conversation. I literally was, I was having something last night, having a conversation out in public, and it was like, be it right there. I'm gonna be all like, you know me, you know me. I'm like, hey, white people suck. You know. No, seriously. It's not that white people suck. It's not. It's that there's a certain group of people who think that they're exceptionalist and they would have us all fighting over one thing or the other. You could say, oh, they're all one thing. No, everybody's kind of got an edge to it. And especially that's what this conversation about is the duality and this, double standard of like, well, you're a bastard, so I guess I can be a bastard to you too. You poked my eye, so let me poke your eye. Oh shit, now we're all blind. Oh God, I can't see the pad. Open your eyes up. Look up!
bringing it up in the context of us versus them, I think that itself contributes to racism.
If we keep talking about it, eventually, it'll probably subside somewhat. I don't think it's going to go away, though.
I think you have to look at things holistically, and you can't be just one-sided, left or right.
I like her. I hope he got her phone number. I'm going to text him later and be creepy. All right.
People recycle the same bullshit topics, but no one's talking about...
Hey! Yes! And why are they recycling the same bullshit topics? Well, let's talk about that for a brief second, because it's more convenient than facing the reality of, there being somebody maybe benefiting off of all of us fighting about the bullshit pocket. Notice how I did that? I changed it for one word. All right.
Think minorities blame white people too much?
Yes, 100% they do, because it's an excuse.
Why the aren't we talking about how we can connect more and actually learn about each other? Why is it always the problem we talking about?
Why can't we connect to one another? Talk about it. Why? Because it's so much easier if we're fighting each other, which is a con. And I want you to go out in the streets, and I want you to light a fire in your hair. Your hair is on fire. I want you to send up a siren and let the neighbors know you love them. You want to share love. You want to have a different conversation. You want to see something outside of the anger and the heartbreak. You want to stop pulling the wool over your own eyes, and you want to look up and love your neighbor.
The solution.
Now, this may sound wild, but has this obsession with race created an environment where woke people and racists are becoming the same thing?
Yes, because when you end up fighting, you're just digging a hole of exceptionalism to the bottom. You're not going upwards, you're going downwards. And in most cases, you're fighting prison style. Shake, 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 shake. Through the bars of your limited perceptions. Wiping your own ass, bedazzling that poopy, and flinging it at the closest person that you don't like. Why? Because it keeps you from paying attention to the things that really drive the issue. Yes, that's right. Have some cognitive dissonance, why don't you? It's called finance, inequity, and a forced limitation of commodity. manufactured scarcity of joy and happiness. Don't believe the hype of racism. Because it starts the argument in the get-go now. So that we can look at each other. And don't believe the con. I want you to not believe the con. Come along. Come along. Don't believe the con. You can be free of all this, folks!
Because if it's true, perhaps one of the first signs was seen 6 years ago in this small college in Washington. The annual day of absence at Evergreen State College involved minority students leaving campus for the day to raise awareness of their contributions. But then in 2017, organizers decided to reverse the roles and asked white students and faculty to leave campus instead.
Okay, so, safe spaces mindset. Let's create inequity. Let's create inequality. Because that's what happened to us. Oh God! Oh God! I can't see! You two can pull the wool over your own eyes and act like an idiot for the sake of entertainment of a very few. Jump on into the ring. There's a line waiting for you. We will applaud. For you as you're eaten by the lions as you proclaim yourself the winner. Your hair is on fire. Look, folks, this kind of behavior, which is empowerment through hate, taking a side so strong that you can't see that you're just enacting the same behaviors that you're fighting against. This is a problem in our society. It's a problem in our world. And it's part of the con, which I urge you to deny.
It's not helpful. Get out.
Brett Weinstein, a white professor, objected, citing these demands as forced segregation and discriminatory. And soon after, Weinstein's objections were met with protests and accusations of racism as student activists called for his resignation for promoting white supremacy.
I am not interested in debate. I am interested only in dialectic, which does mean I listen to you and you listen to me.
Which I find is interesting when you look at some of this stuff. It's like white supremacy. The guy was, what? Huh? White supremacy is like, look up! I think you're sad. That's white supremacy. You want to see white supremacy? Chase from the Whatever podcast. Chase from the Whatever podcast. White supremacy. Ben Shapiro. Brett Shapiro. Brett Shapiro's Disney eyebrows. That's white supremacy. Brett Shapiro's eyebrows are white supremacy. She has white supremacist eyebrows. All right, maybe I took it a little too far. No. There's never such a thing.
Weinstein and his wife resigned from their positions and filed a lawsuit, which was eventually settled for $500K.
Nothing.
And so, even though the protest was made
people lost their livelihood and something they worked their whole life towards, and I'll forget about this in a couple of years when I move out of college, and it won't matter. But I felt empowered at the time, and then later on, I'll feel important when I share the message. When I think that I did something right, but all I did is ruin somebody, and then I didn't change anything. Cancel culture will in some point rebound against those who enacted it. And I don't see it any different than hatred in one way or another, or bigotry. It's just a more convenient way to feel good about it because you think you're doing something righteous. Educating people is one thing, but you can't change them by removing them, and you're the extremist and the exceptionalist when you do such a thing. So give it up, folks! Look out! You can be better than that. Be kind to one another. Love your neighbor. Stop being an ass. Because you're acting like the people that you're arguing about, but you don't even realize that.
felt that they were advocating for inclusion. Reality is that they were promoting exclusion based on race.
That's how whiteness works. Whiteness is the most violent system to ever.
As she's like poking her and pushing, whiteness is the most violent. Whoa, 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 whoa. No, I'm not gonna lie to you. I agree with that because I think one thing in reparations should be, and by the way, this is people are gonna hate me for this, but I don't care. I think one of the reparations should be that the old people that are still alive from those marches, civil rights marches in the early 60s should be allowed to hold a fire hose against the relatives or, no, I'm kidding, not the relatives, but the actual other old people who held the fire hoses against them and unleashed dogs on them, just as a fair turnaround. That's fair turnaround. But if you didn't do that to other people, you shouldn't be indicted with that. You shouldn't be indicted with that. You shouldn't be dicked out for that. Okay? Can't go after the kids, people, because maybe they might have a different point of view. It's ridiculous. That's just being an authoritarian or a totalitarian or a fascist. And by the way, you can be a fascist even though you have liberal ideas. You can be a fascist if you have extremist right-wing ideas. You can be a fascist just by your behavior's sake of deciding that it's your way or the Mickey frickin' highway, because you are then empowering yourself to limit other people's choices and capabilities to be themselves, even if they're wrong. That's fascism. So yeah, I'd agree that woke is just as fascist as alt-right. They should join each other and just spit on each other and go hide in a corner and light each other's hair on fire, honestly. Because, downer, I want to live happy. I want to not see the differences in each other because I don't. It's really about the fact that we're all fighting over a piece of bread. Like, oh, don't take my piece of bread. Oh, there's only one. Oh, no. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. No, I'm not a Muppet. I just play one on TV.
Frankly, every student in that hallway has a clue about where they're going wrong.
And so are we continuing to head down a path of revenge?
Because that's the other thing is, that's one of the things in our society, you know you're doing wrong. Hey, you know you're fucking up. Cut it out. Okay? Okay.
Equality. Because as it stands, is it fair to generalize an entire group based on the actions of a few in the past?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Let's just blame everybody for what happened that your great-great-great-great-grandparents did. Now, mind you, if you're sitting in a mansion that was paid for by somebody else's slavery, yeah, motherfucker. Yeah, you need to give some, yeah. Let me just give you a little boom to your ass. Yeah, you should give back, or because you're basically living off the wealth of cruelty and tyranny and horror. So yeah, that's not right. And as somebody who actually whose family is currently also, just for the openness sake, looking at reparations for the land, property, businesses, and family members that were en masse taken from them in the 40s, and only now getting around to the conversation about that return of value for the family's loss. Well, that's, I understand why you want to look at, the next generation. But you can't blame them for what somebody else did. They didn't do that. Now, if they carry on those beliefs or they're making money off of it, that's a different story. Then you can look at them for some kind of blame, some kind of accountability for taking part. But if they weren't alive or they didn't know anything about it, they had no power in the situation, you can't blame them. Especially if they currently are not enacting anything to do with it. And that's part of this con that would have you just hate someone because, oh my God, they are a crazy, and I didn't like the way you looked, so I'm just going to assume that you're an A. All right? It's not okay.
I actually actually think that's a really interesting question because there's a lot of research coming out about how trauma is intergenerational. So even though you may not have experienced something if your parents did, if they ever shared that story with you, you might have that ingrained memory somewhere.
Okay, well then how about this? Like, I'm Japanese American, right? Do you think then like Americans should judge the actions of my ancestors, let's say, on me?
I think it's important that like people have.
Well, then the argument could be, what about judging, the American government for the standards of putting Japanese people in concentration camps in the 1940s? Yeah, I mean, it's all. We could look at everybody. We've all flung, and caught, and captured, and flung back the poopy with the bedazzled shining on it. Sometimes not even bedazzled, just straight up poopy from the other prison cells. We've all caught it, and I'm saying step outside of it. Think of things different. See your neighbors as humans. Stop with the petty tribal fighting, because essentially we're just cavemen when we do that. Acting in fight or flight because somebody else told you an idea about some kind of belief that doesn't act in reality. Because it's not everybody, it's just a few that are trying to sell that to you because they're benefiting from you believing it, and you're literally feeding. You're feeding it when you buy into that. Okay. We got that? I hope so.
This type of dialogue, why they think a certain way, why they hold certain beliefs, and that's the only way we're going to be able to move forward as a society.
Okay, but what if we take a completely different approach to it? Do you think it's okay to be racist if you're equally racist to everyone?
That's correct.
Yes.
Equal opportunity.
Yes, and yes. I will take you at a face value asshole and love you as a face value asshole if you are equally so to everybody. There's something endearing about that. But that's only because we know who you are. Okay? That's different. You wear it on your sleeve. We can put you in the corner that you want to be in. And that's different. You want to take part in the obelisk, go right ahead. But if you're capturing people into that system and putting them in a cage because you need someone to fight with, then frick off. Flip the frick off. Get your Mickey frickin' horse and move on, bro ham, bro Cephas Maximus. Okay, Kevin?
You're racist?
Equal opportunity racism.
Yes!
One thing someone told me recently is they want to learn more about culture so they
hate equally. No, don't do that. Love equally. That's the problem. That's the problem, is that we don't hear love equally enough. Instead, we're so focused on how we can easier find a route out to dislike somebody. That's wacky.
be more accurate in their racism.
Shut up.
Why do you think I'm traveling right now?
That is straight dedication.
Kidding aside, is saying that we don't have the power to discriminate as minorities using victimhood to actually discriminate. But on the other hand, is this overcorrection necessary to correct the wrongs of the past? And it seems like that's exactly what Hollywood is doing. Whether it be Indian Velma or Black Amy, the recent trend has been replacing originally white characters with minorities.
You got people in the media who, oh my god, I got
media
cannot
be ignored. Do you think that's a good way to increase representation amongst minorities, or do you think that's a bit lazy?
Anytime that we try to intentionally increase visible minority representation in the media is a good thing.
Maybe it's forceful diversity, people trying too hard to be inclusive and all that.
Honestly speaking, I can't say that.
I mean, that's the problem with some of it, is that that's what the feeling is on the other side generally, is that, oh, you didn't call me, and I don't like the fact that you're putting my face. And that is not, that we all know that's not actually the case. It just feels like that to people who are so thin-skinned that they can't possibly see something different on the screen. And so when it's utilized in a new way where representation was never utilized, people like, Brett Shapiro and Ben Chase, that whole, whatever podcast world in the Pearlyverse, they freak out because you don't look like me! You don't look like me! Ah! Fear! I've got fear! Yeah. So it's easy for them to raise a red flag and go, you're not from my prison! Your poopy smells different! Petty, petty, petty. which is really what it comes down to. Because good community, good company, good reasoning, care, love of one another. That's really what we're not focusing on. Ooh. Yeah. Now, I think I've cleared the conversation. I think I've gone pretty far into this, and I really appreciate the fact that our friend Jen here has just kind of nailed it down and really got a site where he's having a conversation that takes it further. But then again, the guy's at Stanford, so he's working on some real serious stuff. He only puts out like 2 videos a month because he's so serious about the topics, and I appreciate him. He's the opposite of Sev Says from Texas, by the way, which that's a whole other side. I've got some of her videos now, and I'm going to be looking at that. Anyways, I think I pretty much covered this. Love your neighbor. See them as lovely for their differences. Enjoy the individuality of reality and the world at hand. And most importantly, people, I want you to remember that if you're thinking about your neighbor as somebody different, or you see humans as somebody different, then look up!